Welcome back, Mr. Brian _ Movement 101.
Hi, Daniel Prymal, or is Prymal actually? Prymal Studios.
Prymal Pro.
Prymal Pro.
Which actually no one knows stands for Prymal Productions because it's the name of the company.
Oh, right, yeah. Everything's your Prymal.
Everyone thinks I'm Prymal. Or Prymal Pro.
Or Prymal Podcast or something.
Yeah.
And we had this conversation actually.
I'm a little rusty on this old fucking thing here, so if we're flicking back and forth, I apologise.
Well, we had a conversation last year about putting your name in because it was going to make it a bit more personable. Like who's Prymal, but we know who Dan is.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to do that.
Not necessarily didn't want to do it. From a strategy point of view, like with Instagram and all that kind of stuff, people follow people much easier than they follow companies. But I was like, I'm not there yet with the whole personal brand thing. I'll grow more of it. Jill's always saying to me, like, talk about yourself more. Like, it's not about me. This is about the business first. I need to establish the business. But
the business is you.
Yeah, I shouldn't be.
But it's interesting.
Who says if it's just you, you don't have a business?
Yeah. Yeah, but no, and I get that, but that's fine. But
and it's not just me anymore now.
No, it's not actually. But remember, I was saying to you on Friday that people think of me and Rob are brothers because of Brian Movement 101 and Rob Movement 101.
Yeah,
like people genuinely think we're brothers because
you're not brothers.
Nope.
I thought you were his dad.
Yeah, well, go away with that. You just look younger than me. But no, like, people genuinely think we're brothers because Brian _ Movement 101 and Rob _ Movement 101.
And you both have very similar frames and builds. And
do we look alike?
At a distance, you're both the same height.
Yeah. At a very far distance, you might think we look alike. I don't think we could say that up front at all.
Well, you'd be forgiven for two people with like the same kind of Instagram handle. There's a connection there straight away. So.
Yeah, Movement 101 is the connection, not brothership. Although we are brothers in arms, I suppose.
Brothers in arms, yeah. Anyway, welcome back.
Yeah, I was going to say, thanks very much for having me back. Because we were into a podcast at Christmas in January and we didn't.
Oh, we didn't, yeah. We didn't hold ourselves accountable. We're being accountable now. And as we said in one of our last podcasts, actually, a very nice compliment. I think I did tell you, I was at a social event recently and someone came up to me and said, big fan of the podcast. My favourite are the episodes with Brian because I think he expresses himself really, really well. How do you feel about that?
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. I hope I do. I definitely try to do my best. And in no shape or form do I believe I communicate very well. But that's a lovely compliment here. Thank you very much.
That's a nice bit of feedback to get you. So we were meant to do a recap of 2022 and we just didn't. And then we were meant to do a podcast in January and you were actually here, but we got very busy. So we got sidetracked. So we're going to cover a couple of things in this episode. First off, we're going to do a little recap, just lessons. And we're not going to go really deep into this, but lessons from...
One lesson each.
From 2022.
Okay.
And then your kind of main focus, one thing you're focusing on for 2023. So would you like to start off 2022? How did it go for you? And what was the takeaway from 2022?
Yeah, it was good, bad and different. I think as most years are. You know, there was plenty of hardship, plenty of joys and plenty of struggle. But I suppose I found 2022 difficult kind of from a personal level, you know. A lot of growth, which is good in terms of personally, but definitely tough. And I mentioned to you a podcast. What my lesson would be kind of perspective or potentially bigger picture thinking. And I said to you, but the saying, which I'm going to ask you again, which is I couldn't see the wood from the trees.
Couldn't see the wood for the trees. Yeah.
Wood for the trees.
Yeah.
So essentially, I was kind of just too upfront in my own vantage point that I couldn't see again the bigger picture or things potentially around me. Nothing bad happened, but just that it was a good experience, some maturity to go through that experience of not being so potentially hasteful in my decision making or things that I believe I should be doing, etc., etc. So, like looking back, and I actually looking forward to 2023. I think it will be a great teacher for me, and I actually am excited to have learned the lesson and now live the lesson. You know, but that's definitely for me looking back at 2022, which was a very good and exciting and fun year, but bigger picture thinking and decision making. Yeah, being a bit more.
Do you feel like you made bad decisions?
I don't know, really. Like, I wouldn't say they were bad. No, I don't think they were bad. They were just decisions at the time that I was making. Like anything, I suppose hindsight's a great thing. Potentially, I should have went left as opposed to going right. And there's some level of frustration, I suppose, from some of the decisions that I made. But like, no, I wouldn't call them bad, personally.
And this is funny because you did this for me and I did this for you. And again, if people have listened to our podcast before, they know we have a good support structure there for each other. And you've mentored me through the early stages of my business and we've become friends. But it's funny from an outside perspective, the decisions that you see as bad decisions. I was like, well, you had to make that decision because it now led to the next decision that you have and we're talking about stuff you've done in your business or whatever now, but it subsequently led to you making a much better decision. And if you hadn't made the bad decision, would you have ever made the better decision? Or would you have just kind of kept going with this is, what's the concept? Chris Williamson talks about this, is that many of us live in a state where it's just about tolerable. So we don't make the decision that we probably should make to change something about our lives because it's not that painful enough. Whereas you, when you made the decision that you call a bad decision, at least you made a decision. It turned out not to be right.
Yep.
In your own subjective view or potentially objective view as well. It turned out not to be the right decision. And that then inspired you to go, for fuck's sake. And you made a better decision.
Yeah.
But if you had never made that initial decision and just kept doing what you were doing, you'd be just living in the grey. Fair enough.
No, 100%. And also the decision I made wasn't necessarily like it was good. It was successful. You know, it wasn't.
This sounds like, we don't have to tell them exactly what the decision is.
Yeah.
It sounds like some big life change.
Yeah, it really isn't that
It was
big.
like a direction to go in a certain direction with the business. Like.
Exactly. It's not honestly isn't a huge thing. It sounds a lot grander and maybe potentially more life changing than it actually is. But you said there, I don't think it's a bad decision. Anyway, you said that maybe I thought it was a bad decision. I don't think it's a bad decision. But even just this kind of idea of just decision making in general, like life kind of goes on and we don't have to necessarily stop whatever decisions we make. And I suppose just for me, I haven't let any decision that I've made that potentially wasn't a decision ultimately that I wanted stop me from, like you said, finding something new or doing something else, So it definitely led me on a path to where I am right now, which I'm clearer going into say February, March of 2023.
And is that what you mean by perspective?
Yeah, I think so. Exactly. Yeah. And also, but you're very good at this for me. You constantly question me. You always ask me the question of like, do you want this? Are you sure about this? Like, again, just give you this kind of perspective of, oh, wait a second, just think about this, and not just in business, in life in general, which I think is a great thing to have, i.e. you, I'm going to use you.
And it's funny because a lot of the questions I ask you are questions you would have originally asked me at the start of my business journey when I had a clue what I was doing loads of stuff and you were like, well, is this really what you want? And I'm just re-asking you those questions.
Well, it's interesting because then potentially where we may segue into later on in the episode, like, isn't that just life? Like, we don't have all the answers and we all have things kind of going on and you need support, you need help, and you need some level of clarity at any stage of your journey. You know what I mean? So like, it's just the ongoing process of life and progress. It's fucking never ending. Yeah. No matter what the hell you do, still tomorrow, So that's kind of.
And when you say you have more perspective now from that, what does that feel like? What does that look like for you, having that perspective?
It feels very freeing. I have a lot more drive and energy and like a want to step forward into life almost, Like I feel like I've got my juju back. Not that I ever kind of like lost it completely or kind of whatever, but like, yeah, I just feel a lot more clear of a path or a vision. Nothing has actually changed really right now. You know what I mean? Everything that I'm kind of working towards is still the exact same, but it feels clearer. I don't feel as heavy. Maybe is the way to go.
And is there a carryover from, like, this is obviously a business decision we're talking about here, is there carryover from that into other decisions? What are you going to have for your dinner?
Yeah, maybe not for my dinner, but like actually potentially for my dinner because I'm getting in better shape. But like, yes, because as we always talk about, I always talk about principles. It's not actually about the business. It's just about life, and me kind of stepping forward into a version of me that I want to become. So making a decision that I made last year, a decision I'm kind of making now, it's allowing me to step forward into other areas of my life and make better quality decisions essentially as well.
Do you get this a lot? Because it's funny, I was thinking when you were talking there, a lot, because I know people have said it about you, a lot of people might not, because you're successful, and I know these are weird words we throw around, but you are objectively successful and people look at you when the Instagram, the business is rocking and rolling, etc. And then they hear that you're struggling with stuff. They're like, hold on, no, you can't be struggling, you're successful. Do you get people say that to you sometimes? Like, or they seem shocked when they hear that you maybe have been struggling with something?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's like anything. I think we all do it. Like, not just in terms of social media, but anyone who is quote unquote successful. I'm not saying that I am successful, but like, you just presume that everyone has it easier or because they're doing well in a certain domain of their life or whatever that is, that they have it all sussed and have it all sorted. But me and that's just not the case. Like, for me, for you, for anybody, like, we all struggle. Like, we do all struggle. And I think that's what me and you, or certainly I'm trying to do with the podcast and having these conversations, is to be yourself and to show that, like, what is success? Like, you know, it's such a weird word.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Is it a monetary thing? Is it a number in fucking social media? Like, because we know both of those things are bullshit for an awful lot of people. Those things don't matter in any kind of shape or form because you got to get up every single morning. You've got relationship, you've got a life to lead, and everyone kind of struggles, you know? So I think people might be surprised to hear that I struggle. I don't know if they would be listening to this, like, but I think we all know that people struggle. Like, who the fuck am I? Definitely struggle.
This is a really interesting kind of experiment that I get to do at the moment, because in a lot of the cases where we as people may want to like pick at this idea of success, most people who say that money is not the solution to success are people who never have money. So it's easier for them to say that thing. Most people who say it's never social media are people who have never had a big social media growth or following or that kind of success. So that's the side of the table that most of us are familiar with. But now that I'm in this world, I meet so many people with massive social media followings, massively successful businesses. And I also meet people who are on inward journeys, so they're looking for the success inside them. So all of these different aspects and elements, and the people with the social media followings and the people with the big businesses and all the money, they say the same thing. It's not the business, it's not the money, it's not the social media followings. And I'm like, okay, well, the people who actually have this stuff are saying it, as well as the people that don't have this stuff. I'd be a fool not to listen to that, because the message is unanimous. That's not where it is. And then I speak to people who are doing self-work, deep work, inwards work. They're looking inside. They're trying to find meaning and purpose. And they feel successful in themselves and their journey and their day-to-day. And I'm like, I'm starting to do some of that stuff now. And on some days, I'm like, I feel pretty successful. I look at my kids. I look at, I was saying to today, it's like, it was randomly just popped into my head. Like, I woke up this morning, I can eat pretty much what I want. I go to work in a business that I built. I see my family. They're healthy. They're happy. It's like, that's successful. And that's a cliche thing to say, but I felt it today. And I feel it more regularly now that I'm starting to do a little bit of self-work. So that idea of, yeah, well, it's not the money because I don't have money. But when I have money, then I will be successful. Just does that little underlying voice for everybody. Well, like me and you are both surrounded by people who have lots of money and are very, very successful. But they say the same thing, which is really interesting.
I think it is interesting to say, because like, what is success? And I think we all get lost down different rabbit holes of comparison and whatever, like no matter who the hell you are. And then when you do feel that gratitude of what you have, geez, there's nothing better. Like, you know, you're saying, like, you know, with your kids or with your missus. And again, just the most, I think I had it with Sailor there, like on Saturday. We were just playing. I think we were doing hairdress up. She was doing my hair. And it was just the best thing ever. Like, it was nothing.
I wish my kids could do my hair.
Yeah, well, that's because I remember I thought you had your haircut. That's okay. But no, like, genuinely, it was just like, this is just a moment in time. And I'm like, this is success. That's success. Yeah. And I suppose what you're talking about there is that you want to feel more of those moments because they are all around us. And that's where, if I go back to me in that bigger picture thinking, you kind of get lost in the bullshit because you're overwhelmed or you're stressed or because you got responsibility. But if you're able to kind of step back from that, then you really see kind of what matters or kind of what you can do.
What's the quote that Williamson talks about all the time? I don't know who the original quoter was, but he talks about this idea of we chase success to give us the thing that we want, which is the thing that we're giving up to get that success. So he's basically saying we have the thing at the moment. We have our health. Well, I know most of us, and many of us have our health. Some people don't, obviously, but we have our family. Whatever it is that you value, we have that right now for the most part, because it's not external things, it's internal things. But we give that up to go in search of the thing that we think is going to make us successful. When it's right here all the time. And it sounds quite cliche. I've actually butchered that there now completely. But essentially,
no, I get the idea.
You spend less time with your family, less present with your family because you're out trying to earn money to spend more time with your family. And you're like, well, it's right here. And obviously, there's a mid ground there because you need to earn money to put a roof over your head or whatever. But we get really distracted by this idea of external success, and it's not actually out there.
I think I would agree with you, but I think it's
that's not me, by the way. That's a quote that I've butchered by somebody else who I've also butchered.
Yeah, but I think because there's an innate thing as human beings in terms of progress, I think. You know, so like, I just think it's in us to kind of want more. So like, whatever that wanting more is, and that's why I think you have to be careful with like, you know, the questions you ask yourself, the action steps that you are taking, and I think you're going to detail one of your lessons of last year. Because like, it's all like... Yeah, it's just crazy. It's madness. Like it is crazy if you allow things to kind of get away from you and you realize kind of what you do have. But I think that's just life. That is just life. You're constantly trying to find peace and contentment and connection.
But that's why the language I think is important. That's not success. So peace and contentment are all fine, but that's not what we view typically as success are what we've mentioned.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
The money and
Yep.
the status and all that kind of stuff. And I know that's also intrinsically ingrained in many of us, as men specifically as well, that status piece, because it makes us feel more connected. But if you already have a level of connection, and I'm talking about certain situations here, if you have a family, if you have children, if you have good friends, if you have good people around you, if you have the inner peace, if you have a lot of that stuff, or you're working on a lot of that stuff, that's where the success actually is. And if you think it's the flash cars and the house and the money, that's just a proxy for those feelings of connection. We talked about this before. Like we as men, we want this other stuff because it puts us higher in the status, higher in the hierarchy of the male hierarchy, and means we're more likely to attract a mate or to gain the respect of other people. And what does that bring us? More connection. So if you can actually bypass that whole journey of trying to get all these external things that you think are going to give you those connections, because they won't, and focus on generating actual connection, that's where it is. So the drive is the same. You still want to be connected and respected and part of a community and have that inner peace and have that sense of self and purpose and drive. But we associate external things with that when that's actually not true.
That's interesting, because I think it's a good segue into your lesson for 2022, because I actually think that could be a huge issue for the vast majority of us, of why we don't.
How do you know my lesson for 2022?
Because I have a feeling, I just have an inkling that you might say something. I don't know what it is, but I have an inkling. What is your lesson for 2022?
Is it potentially because it's written on this page beside me?
Yes, that's what it is, of course.
My big takeaway from 2022, I had many takeaways. It was a very interesting year, but my biggest one was distraction, or the ability of things to distract me from what I'm trying to do. So I have this thing over here, which is what I feel my purpose is, and my drive and my motivation and my energy and my vitality. And then I have all of these other things in my life that are feels like they're actively trying to stop me from achieving these things. Now, I know that's not true. They're not actively, there's no evil string puller over there, but there are so many pitfalls and distractions and potholes for me.
Give us a few examples.
Social media, TV, people's opinions, my own lack of my own insecurities, my comparison syndrome, so external and internal factors that are trying to distract me from what I'm trying to do. So I'm not trying to say that I have some divine purpose here, but I've started to develop some clarity around what it is that I want from my family, from my business, from my life, from myself. And all of these external things and some internal things are distracting me from that. So the way I frame it is, if I allow them to distract me, then I'm allowing them to take control of my life. And that lets me frame it like in a way that I can give myself back control. So now I'm not allowing those things to take control away from me, as opposed to, they're harmless little things here and there. It's like, no, if they stop me, if they take me away from my family, for example, if they take me away from my business, take me away from my personal development, then I'm giving control of my life away. I'm becoming subservient to those things that don't actually offer me any value. And then when I go a little bit deeper on that, it's like, why do I get distracted by these things? Just because over here with this purpose thing, there's fear. And over here, the fear goes away. And it's nice and soft and airy and fairy. And I say this so many times, I'm almost hoarse saying this. I don't care what other people do with their lives. And there's not a judgment piece on people who want to watch Netflix. Every now and again, I like to watch Netflix. Every now and again, I scroll on my phone. But I am trying to recognize when that's simple entertainment and when it's distraction. And what I've realized is 9 times out of 10, I'm just trying to distract myself from something I know I should be doing. And should is a weird word. I know I use should incorrectly sometimes. I don't think like I should be doing because there's this massive purpose for me. But based on what I've decided I want to do in my life, 9 times out of 10, me scrolling on Instagram doesn't serve that. 1 time out of 10, if I'm aware of it, and I'm scrolling on Instagram, but 9 times out of 10. So that's one example of many, many things that I've found in my life just distract me from what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. And that's what I'm saying about maybe going back to, ask the question of what is success. I think if you kind of get rid of these distractions, because they do all consume us. They consume all of us. And I think particularly just say something like social media, like how awful do you feel when you're scrolling through social media and you've done it for half an hour, and you're like, what the fuck was that? Like, you feel like an idiot.
It's twofold, I think, and maybe you can echo this. One, you feel shit because you feel shit anyway after mindless scrolling. Your brain is kind of numbed. But 2, you feel shit because you feel guilty because you know that you could have been spending that time doing something else. And that's something else. I'm not talking about like the hustle and the grind, and every hour of the
Yeah,
day
yeah.
should be maximised. I'm talking about could be spending time with my family, could be having a nice conversation with someone, could be going for a walk, could be engaging with my partner and having a good conversation. I'm talking about that kind of stuff. I could have been doing that.
Even like resting, going to sleep.
That's a great point, actually.
But you know what I mean?
Even not doing
like,
anything.
Yeah, but like that's what I mean about like what is success and all that. Like, I think the likes of kind of distraction, i.e., social media, or again, what else is happening across the road or something. It's like that's again, like you said, it feels good in the moment because it kind of stops you feeling potentially the fear or the awfulness or whatever the hell it is that you're trying to distract yourself from. And if we don't put barriers in place to stop ourselves being distracted, we're controlled. And life's fucking hard enough as it is, as opposed to just being fucking numbed and distracted. Like, it's hard to take action than all of these avenues in our lives that we know we should be doing, but yet, like, we don't.
You said should.
Yeah. What is your thing with should? So, like,
No, I get a bit pedantic around the word should. Sometimes when we have conversations like this, or you listen to conversations like this, when I say should, that can be interpreted as I'm telling you how you should live your life, or I'm on this pedestal or this in my ivory tower looking down saying this is how the world should work, and it's very virtuous. I'm not virtuous at all. I say this so much. I don't care what other people do. Not that I don't care about other people. It's not my business how people live their lives. When I say should, for me, my should is, I think I described it like this before. If I want to run a marathon, I need to do certain things to get my body in shape to run a marathon. So in my life, I've decided that I want to do certain things. I want to be a dad. I want to run my own business. I decided these things. It wasn't forced upon me. I'm very, very lucky to be able to do these things, and I've decided to do these things. So where I frame the word should now is in my own, the world I've created for myself. The things I should be doing are the things that are going to bring me closer to that. That's how I frame it. Not a global, everybody should be healthy. Everybody should do this. Everybody should eat this. That's not it. But in my experience, the way I live my life and the people I surround myself with, these are the things I should be doing or need to be doing to achieve this goal. And this goal is something that I've outlined for myself. So I think that's a more empowering way for me to look at it.
That's really interesting. If you go back to the distraction, and Peterson talks about this, about, if you want to find the answer of what you, quote unquote, should do in your life, just sit up at nighttime and question.
Because you'll decide what you should do.
But again, but as opposed to hopping on your phone or going looking at YouTube, or again, distracting yourself away from sitting and going, okay, I know I can be better here. I know I've got fear here. I know what the next action step is. So let's kind of rock and roll. Like, let's do it. Yeah. As opposed to forget about it, put it away, distract ourselves.
And do you think that most people, and it's a very broad statement, but do you think that most people, given that sitting alone time, would probably come up with something very similar?
Similar in what sense?
In terms of most people deep down inside know that, like, for example, my belief is, this is my opinion, my belief is that most of us know that we can be and want to feel better. And that does involve being healthier, it does involve being fitter, it does involve moving, it does involve engaging and connecting for the most part. And if you sit by yourself, they're the things that are going to come up from most people. There'll be some outliers, whatever. But in general, I believe that we're human beings, we're biological creatures. We've studied ourselves for thousands and thousands of years. We've seen patterns. We're communal, and we like connection. We need connection. So anything that strays from that in terms of, no, it's all about individual success and it's programming. To be honest, that's my opinion. It's programmed into us. It's cultural and societal programming. As animals, we want connection. That's my belief anyway. So most of us would probably end up saying, I want to be a better person. I want to be nicer. I want to be connected. I want to feel good. I want to be healthy. I want to move. I want to be outside. I want some sense of inner peace. Not, I want this mad career. I want super success. And again, as I said earlier on, they are connected with some of our biological triggers as well, because ultimately that leads to connection. But given this space away from input, away from triggers, away from programming, away from stimulus, we'd probably all come up with something similar, and the should would then become a more universal should. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that's why we are lucky in the sense of kind of being entrepreneurs and business owners, because I think it gives you begin to question yourself a lot more, because like I said, a should of what I want to do, this is me choosing to do this thing, it reveals itself when I don't do the thing that I know I should or need to do. And I don't like that feeling. I don't do everything perfect every single day, but I've got better, and me and you are getting better at leaning in or asking the question of, okay, what has to be done now? Like, for example, distraction. So my focus is going to be for 2023, I'm kind of leaning in here, kind of going more. But me personally, just over the last month or two, and we had a conversation last week, I want to have less distraction in 2023. And no longer as the little boy that I am at 36 years of age, knowing the bullshit that keeps me up at night or that I use to fucking numb the fucking fear. Fuck that shit. Let's actually do it. And let's actually stop doing the things that I know are just distracting me. Simple. Like, it's so simple. It doesn't make it any fucking easier, but it's like, no, fuck this shit. Let's really begin to level up because I don't want to be distracted anymore. I don't want it, the numbness. Fucking done with that shite, you know?
What you're saying there is very like Jocko and Goggins-esque, and because I know we've had this conversation in layers much deeper than this. But can you explain for people listening that idea of being because it sounds like you're being really harsh, and I know for a fact because I've been triggered by stuff like this before that if somebody who is listening right now is not in the same headspace that you are, which is very likely, they will hear what you've just said and completely go, "What the fuck is this guy talking about? That's just like military hardline bullshit," and he's just spouting out this Goggins stuff because it's. I know it's deeper than that because I've spoken to you about this. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? This idea of you're still a boy, you're a 36-year-old boy.
Oh right, yeah. Well, I suppose just in terms of like responsibility, like I just know how much more I can do. I know how much more I can be. I know how much more responsibility I can genuinely take on my shoulders and me as a man. And I'm at a stage in my life where I want to take on more responsibility. But not for the sake of responsibility, just for the sake to understand myself more, just to be a better man or a better husband or a better father. And that's going to require work. That's going to require effort. That's going to require me not to fall back into the comfort of distraction. Like, it's what I did for years in my 20s when I wasn't taking action. Like, where I was a little bit lost with what I was doing with my life, and I'd read all the self-help books, and I wouldn't actually do it with them. And like, it's like, what the fuck? So I'm just at a stage in my life now where I'm not saying that this is some grandiose thing or whatever, but just for me personally, I don't want to be numbed anymore. I don't want to let these things control me because I know they're out to control me. I know social media and phones, all these things are literally designed to make me consume them and be lost down by them. And then to compare, not to take action, not to feel fucking good. I can't sleep properly at nighttime, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on. So if I know all this, when will I, me as a man, 36-year-old man, say enough is enough for me, not for anybody else, just for me? So my focus for 2023 is like, fuck this. Like, just get rid of this distraction. So I said to you about the last couple of days how I haven't got on my phone for about 2 hours in the morning time. And I want to go and check it. I'm like, no, just leave it. And now I'm choosing where I'll go on my phone in terms of check my email, or I'm going to check social media or get onto team members or whatever. I'm just trying and testing different ways of how I'm going to interact with my day. And just to learn more and kind of build a system over the next year to progress for me, physically, mentally, emotionally. I don't want to be controlled by this shit anymore. I keep talking about social media. Like, social media isn't necessarily a huge issue for me, but just distraction in general. So, for example, I decided to do 1 year no beer this year. I haven't got a huge alcohol problem. It's not necessarily something that I wrestle with negatively, but it just has no purpose in my life really anymore. Like, me going to get pissed every 3 months or 4 months, I just don't really see the point. It's like I use that as an excuse because I work really hard. I could do with some time off, but I'm hungover there for 2 or 3 or 4 days. I'm a terrible father. I don't want to fucking get up out of fucking bed and do all this work that I have to get done. I don't particularly enjoy my life because I got no drive or energy from getting pissed drunk. So it's like, okay, so what are you doing it for? No, okay, yeah. But why am I doing it? Actually, I don't want to do it. So just commit. And nothing, not any big fucking reason there's anything wrong with alcohol. Just for me. I'm questioning my relationship around it. It's distracting me and I'm using it as a crutch or an excuse to do this at a big occasion, at a wedding or whatever. It's like, it doesn't serve me. And if I'm 36 years of age now and I want to keep progressing and growing, I know all the answers. Like, I know the answers right now that I'm not doing every single day. So I don't necessarily need more information. I need to begin to take the action that I am taking. I am getting better year on year. I'm not saying that I'm not. But it's like, what could you do? Genuinely, what could I actually do if I leaned into this properly with real fucking courage? On the days that I want to, with real confusion, with plenty of fucking fear. And I feel ready as a 36-year-old man, kind of only now to do it. Like, no, genuinely. So I'm sick of it. When I say I'm a boy, I'm not a literal boy. I am a man, but there's some aspects of my life where I react and distract and fall back into the comfort of the boyishness in me.
Very nice. It is about responsibility, isn't it? That difference between a boy and a man. It's really interesting because you said to me last year about giving up the drink, and I didn't get it. I got it, but I didn't get it at the same time because I was like, you don't drink, so it's not really a challenge for you. But I got a lot of clarity around this for two reasons. One, we got a new manager in to our football team, and when we had a team meeting, one of the first things he said was, "Never say to me," he said, "question me on everything. We talk about everything. We'll build strategy together as a group of people. But never say to me that we're doing something because this is the way we've always done it. If you ever say that to me, we're going to have a massive problem. We don't do anything just because it's the way we've always done it." And I started thinking about this in application to the drink because I'm also not drinking at the moment. And I didn't decide to do no year, no beer. I decided that every single time there was an opportunity or a temptation, for me, it's not a big challenge as well because I rarely drink. I didn't drink at all when I was younger. I rarely drink now. So it's not a big challenge to stay off the drink. But there are opportunities to drink regularly. Weddings, parties, having a beer, watching TV or whatever like that. None of which are an issue for me ever. I never have been. I've never struggled with it. But now each one of those for me is an opportunity to take responsibility and ask myself a question, does this do me any good? And usually the answer is no. And oftentimes it actually does me harm in the long term. So I don't really enjoy it. It doesn't add anything to my life. So right now I get to make the decision. And every decision I've had to make over the last 2-3 months has been no. There hasn't been one opportunity to consume alcohol. I don't have a problem with alcohol in principle. There hasn't been one opportunity for me where I go, this is going to add something to my life. So now that's just the way I live my life from now on. So I'm not really doing it for 1 year. And there might be an opportunity this year where I go, look, I'd like to go on a date with my fiance and have a glass of wine. And that's fine because I make that decision. But for me, it's all about me making the decision as opposed to just doing it because it's something I've always done. I've always had a couple of drinks at the wedding. I've always had a glass of wine. I've never had a problem with drink, but I've always just done this. So now I'm asking, am I just doing this because I've always done it? Or am I doing it because I want distraction? Or am I doing it because I've nothing better to do? Or I'm just not making a decision. So for me, it's about empowering myself to make those decisions. So I didn't really get it now, but now I get it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But like I said, it's the exact same thing with me because I think, like you said there, we've always done this thing. And particularly now as you begin to experience life more as you get older, like I think a lot of people do stop questioning how they want to live or their values because we change as people. Like who I am, say this time last year certainly is different, but this time 10 years ago is different. So I have to be willing to at least question what I'm doing. And then the question is, do I want to keep doing it? And if I don't want to keep doing it, that means changing a habit that's been ingrained for years and years and years. So I'm not necessarily talking about alcohol. I'm just talking about distraction. I've been consuming social media. I've been on my phone since I was, I don't know, about 12 or 13. And I run my business off it, so I use it. But it gets to a stage then where it begins to use me. And it's like, well, that's fine. But I've built awareness around it. And I've got to make a change if I genuinely want to be better. Because, like I said, as much as the alcohol might not serve you, consuming social media or being lost down some kind of bullshit doesn't serve me either. And I'm ready now to move to another level in terms of my standards, in terms of what I actually want to achieve, in terms of how I want to live. So, yeah, am I kind of spouting on?
No, not at all. And again, I want to just say to everybody listening here, I've no issue with drink. Drink if you want to drink, but that's the whole point. Yeah. Drink if you want to drink.
Yeah.
Make the decision for yourself is what I like to do now. It's not the drink. It's you just said that that's a proxy for everything.
Yeah.
Now everything that's potential is good. Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Or am I just doing it because I've always done it?
And that's why it's quite interesting for me, and just in the phase of my life that I'm in.
I like a beer, by the way.
Yeah, and I do too. Not as much as you would probably into just having a beer, but like all these things that in terms of my distraction and the choices I'm making now, like I've known that they haven't served me for quite a long time, you know. But it's almost like I just have the courage this year or where I am in my life to be like, I'm now going to kind of change. I'm clear of what I value. I'm clear of what I'm doing, my family, my daughter, of what I want to do day to day, you know? And then even just having these conversations and being surrounded by people like you, like it builds more awareness around who I am, around what I want. And we always talk about it, as the pain gets so great, it's kind of like, what are you fucking doing? Like you can change at any time. Like Naval always talks about it. But productive procrastination. You know, you think you're doing something. Of going to the seminar, watching the YouTube video.
Mental masturbation.
Yeah, like you're not actually doing the thing. You know what you should do and you don't do it. And that's me in terms of like making these changes. I know exactly what it is I want to do. So off you go and do it.
Yeah.
Well, let me turn to you then, because you, I'm taking your distraction lesson from 2022 and taking that into my 2023. That's my focus, is to be less distracted. What's your focus for 2023? One focus.
My focus for 2023 is, there's a couple of ways for me to say this, but like leaning into all the concepts we talked about before. So kind of breaking that habit of mental masturbation or productive procrastination and moving forward, but moving forward at a steady, consistent pace, because I tend to go at something 100 miles an hour, completely burn out, and then drop down and get kind of a little bit sad and distracted and kind of do nothing for a little bit, and then go at it 100% again. And like, Jill tell you this is characteristically me. And lately I found that I've managed to strike a much nicer balance where I'm working much more efficiently, much more of the time, and getting much more done and enjoying it much more. And it was this concept I spoke to you about the other day about just plodding along. So like a metronome, just get super consistent. But that is starting to require me now to pull all the habits in my life that are causing me to be inconsistent back in. So not sleeping any differently on the weekends, and not eating any differently on the weekends, and not trying to be super aware and super consistent with my kids all the time, and figuring out why sometimes I'm less patient with my kids because I'm tired. So that's another thing I'm trying to rate. Why am I tired? And trying to figure out all the stuff that's causing me to be less consistent and less able to plod, and to build that endurance up for being consistent. And also have some times where I rest and some times where I work really, really hard, but constantly leaning in, and also finding that discomfort and leaning into that discomfort. And that's a real cliche thing to say, seek discomfort and all that, but I'm experienced in getting through some discomfort and finding like real growth on the other side. So now when I'm feeling the discomfort, I'm just it's okay, just keep moving forward. You don't have to like freak out and pull everything down, and you don't have to be super happy or super sad. Just keep moving through this discomfort, and you're going to get through it, and on the other side there's going to be growth there as well. But then on top of that as well, so there's layers to it. Being really aware of, is this helpful discomfort, or is this just discomfort for the sake of discomfort? So it's not about like self-flagellation, but stuff that's difficult for me to do, but that I recognize is valuable or in line with the goals or values that I have. That's a good discomfort. That's something to move through, and that's something that can and should be endured. And like that endurance thing is a funny one as well, because the other thing that I like, you mentioned Naval, I like this idea of work really hard and then rest as well. But when you zoom out from that, when you get big picture on that, it's super steady. You've got a rhythm to it. There's a rhythm. You work really hard and then you rest. And that is a rhythm. That is steady. It's not erratic. And maybe that's a better way of me saying it. I want to be less erratic with what I do and how I do it. And I have done this in phases, and the results are phenomenal in every aspect of my life. My relationship is better. My relationship with my kids is better. My business is better. It grows. Like sometimes you say to me, the evidence looking unbelievable, the business, and you're like, what's happening? I'm like, it's going fine. There's a couple of new clients in. The social content's going out. I'm creating my podcast. And you're like, they're all the metrics they're all the things that you need to be going well. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't do anything extreme, so I don't expect any great results. And it's like, no, you just need to be consistent and find a way to have that regular rhythm. So that's a really long-winded way for me to say, leaning into that discomfort, finding my rhythm, and pulling back the areas in my life that may be a little bit erratic or distract. Again, it's back to distraction.
Well, you said this to me a few weeks ago, but it's kind of idea of plodding along, and it really resonated with me, of like, particularly in a uncomfortable moment or potentially a lack of clarity. You're just trying to get that action step, and it doesn't have to feel great. It doesn't have to necessarily feel like you want to do this, but just making sure that you do plod along and you do the work, knowing that you're going to come through this if you keep it going. And I think I definitely resonate with that leaning in. And I think I was saying to you off podcast, for me, it's just that kind of courage, that courage of plodding along, that courage of not really wanting to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then you said there about that kind of distraction. I think if you lose that distraction, I think you've got more energy to plod in those fearful moments. Because we've said this a couple of times now, like regarding that kind of fear and then that progress, like it's never ending. It's not that it's going to stop. So knowing that, at least that if we can get better systems, get rid of that distraction and step forward into life, leaning into it actively, it's like, that's much more empowering than fucking being pulled around.
That's the word. It is empowering, and because as difficult as it is, you make the decision. You're not forced into this.
Yes.
You put yourself in there, and that's a massive psychological advantage.
That's huge. And that if I look at me as a boy and a man, like as being kind of forced into doing this, or you kind of have to do this, it's like, no, I'm going to choose to do this. Like, so me to take more responsibility. I know what I can do. I know I'm more than capable. I know I can adapt to this. So again, you don't have to be perfect today, but you can lean in. You can keep plodding along, and you'll get better. You will adapt. So there's no need to be afraid. And then also knowing that through that fear and that adaptation comes a newness, comes a creativity, comes something on that other side that we don't know what it is just yet. But that's life, like, it's just that plod, and that rhythm, man. You said to me, boom, 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 boom. Fucking love that.
Yeah.
Just that rhythm
And it
flying.
doesn't always have to feel good, and a lot of times it won't feel good, but you're in the rhythm. You're in the rhythm. And this is actually a really nice segue to something that is maybe going to be weird people out a little bit. We're going to have a little bit of a deeper conversation on this. You said there that load, that burden, when you decide to embrace that and to accept that responsibility, that burden, whatever your burden, your load might be. And I'm fully appreciative that I live a very, very nice life. My burdens are mine. But that's exactly the point. My burdens are mine. Your burdens are yours, and everybody else's burdens are there. So when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about this as everyone should do what I do or do what you do. But the concept of accepting the responsibility for your burden, like there's a quote, and it's been a clip, and I see it pop up every now and again from the podcast we did before about it might not be your fault. So whatever situation you find yourself in your life right now, it might be your fault, but it might not be your fault. But it's your responsibility. And once you accept that responsibility, and again, if we're talking about the difference between a man and a boy, for me, it's accepting the responsibility and not feeling like it's forced upon you, because you'll resent it. It'll feel heavy. You'll drag your feet. But if you pick that load up and you accept it and you carry it, it's just a subtle shift. It's the same fucking load, but it's a subtle shift in mindset. For me, it's made all the difference. And to illustrate this point nicely, Brian, tell the lovely people, where were we on Friday afternoon last?
Last Friday we went.
And why did we do it?
Well, last Friday we went to the Wicklow Mountains, which we do pretty much on a monthly occasion. Although that was the first time this year, wasn't it?
It was the first one this year. We haven't done in maybe 3 months. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
But we do it regularly enough.
Yeah, so every month or two we go to the Wicklow Mountains and we take some psilocybin to hike, connect with great friends, have good conversations, and essentially to look inward in ourselves and ask ourselves some questions. Literally the questions that we're asking and talking about right now, just go a little bit deeper. And we purposely go to nature because it seems to give us some phenomenal answers. And it's a tool that we use to connect with ourselves and to go a little bit deeper on these questions. It's almost like it's a tool to allow us connect with ourselves and go deeper at a very visceral level.
What's psilocybin for people who might?
Magic mushrooms, I suppose, is what you would say. And we went on Friday, and we went to a phenomenal spot, and me and you had a similar experience. Do you want to take over here and begin the old journey of kind of what transpired?
Yeah, I want to give some context for people first to understand the why of this, because we spoke about it before, and it's the empowerment piece. I'm very, very aware that there's a lot of divides when people start to talk about things like psilocybin. And I've said before, like I've been involved in some ceremonies and stuff like that as well. I've been exploring this world of plant medicines, psychedelics, whatever you want to call it. I had Dara Stewart on the podcast and we spoke about this in detail. And my belief is that substances like these are tools like any other tools, but they're very, very powerful tools that can help us when used in, and people are familiar with this phrase, set and setting, and intent. If your intent is to learn about yourself, to maybe uncover certain areas of yourself, to break down some psychological barriers, to
look into the darkness on occasion.
To look into the darkness, it's definitely a helpful tool, especially in a world where many of us, myself included, have a lot of psychological barriers and behaviours put up specifically to prevent us from having to think about the stuff that causes us pain. It's a natural response, and we spoke about this with Padraig Danaher as well. He outlined it really nicely. So why I do it and why you do it is specifically to try and go a little bit deeper, even though we're aware that it's painful. And to point out, caveat, I'm not very experienced, and neither are you. Like we're talking a handful of experiences here, but we've been really, really, really is intentful a word? We've had lots of intent with every experience we've had that it's going to be something that we learn from, as opposed to, and we discussed this when we were up there as well, taking a bunch of shrooms and getting off your tits to escape from your life.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with alcohol. Having a beer in the context of enhancing an experience with a partner or friends or whatever, amazing. That's an amazing way to use alcohol. Drinking to get ossified because you want to forget about your shit and your problems is escapism. It's totally different. So I just want to paint this picture for people as to we're not taking shrooms and going up into the woods to get away from the fucking missus or my job is so shit or anything like that. We're going up there, as you said, to look for a deeper sense of connection. And we're very careful who we do it with. So it was myself and yourself, and we won't mention the other gentleman in case he doesn't want to be mentioned.
Fair enough. And if I can just say as well, because obviously we talked about doing the psilocybin journeys as well previously.
The ceremonies.
Ceremonies in previous podcasts. And again, you already said it, but the idea of set and setting and the intent behind why you're doing these things is everything. Like, it really is absolutely everything. Like, it's not just doing it for the crack. Like, we are genuinely trying to find a deeper connection with ourselves, with each other, and just trying to look within and using that as a tool. But also the answers that you do get, it means nothing unless you're integrating these lessons. And these lessons are nothing new.
That's a great point. This stuff is, because I've had a couple of discussions with people in the psychology realm, and there's a lot of disagreement around this, and I get it, because it's pop culture now to take psychedelics. So I get that that's given it a bit of a bad rap as well. But for me, all this helps do is break down your internal barriers to discover yourself more. The answers are in there. Yeah. It's not giving you anything new.
No.
It's already in there.
And actually the hardest thing is then when you get an answer or you feel this at a very visceral level, it's like, let's live your life day to day. What are you going to change, or what are you going to do, or what are you going to integrate now that you have these answers that you're looking for or whatever. So and that's the hardest part, and go back to that distraction, go back to those decisions that you make, to the actions that you take. That's everything. So really just one moment in time means nothing unless you truly step forward into what you know you should step forward into.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that context given for the why, we were up in the Wicklow Mountains, had a beautiful walk by a river, and we had consumed some psilocybin, and had what was relatively normal kind of first half of the hike. It's absolutely stunning up there. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's amazing. And then at some point throughout the hike or the walk, there was a rock on the ground. Mm-hmm. I found this rock, and I just decided I'm picking up this rock. For me, it felt like a symbolic, I didn't know what, but it felt symbolic to me. So we picked up this rock, and we decided we were going to climb this very steep mountain as opposed to walk along the trail. We started climbing the mountain. And the process of picking up the rock and climbing the mountain and being in nature and having the conversations we had, and obviously the psilocybin itself and the state of mind, the mindset that we were in, I'll speak for myself first. I had a phenomenal experience, and it kind of helped me understand, when I speak about taking responsibility, helped me understand that the burdens that I have in my personal life at the moment, this is going to sound cliched, most of them are not burdens at all. And in fact, once I accepted that, I decided to pick this rock up. So once I accepted that these are the things I've decided to pick up, and they are difficult and challenging, but they're mine, and I decided to do that, it was like a whole new level of realization for me around like what I actually have in my life. And while it's difficult, rather than bitch and moan about it being difficult, if I accept and embrace that, my life is going to be 1,000 times better. The rock felt like nothing when I was carrying it. And again, all symbolic, but the rock felt so easy to carry up this mountain. It was a fucking steep mountain. So easy. Body was probably fatigued. I didn't feel fatigued at all because I had accepted this burden. And I had a fantastic experience carrying this rock up and staring out into nature and connecting with nature, and really feeling on a deep level that doing a pretty decent job here. I'm carrying this rock. I've accepted this. It feels amazing. And for me, that was representative of many, many different areas of my life, my family, my children. It's difficult to raise children, but it is the most rewarding thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And the more I accept and embrace that, and the more, and Jill is great for helping me understand my kids and understand what this whole thing is, the more I accept that responsibility and engage with it, the better everything is. The better they are, the better I am, the better our relationship is. Everything improves. So for me, that gave me a real deep, visceral realization, reminder of that out in nature. And it was massively emotional. It was tears. I was laughing. I was singing. I was holding this rock. Sounds a bit fucking mental, all right, but it was incredible. And then I caught back up with you guys up on your level of the mountain, and you can tell us about your story.
Well, I had quite a good experience when you were on the mountain. You were doing your kind of own thing, and I was doing my own thing. And I had experience of kind of a similar kind of acceptance of me as a man and my responsibilities and how lucky I am. But I asked you then, could I take the rock down the mountain? And this mountain was extremely steep. So I got down the mountain and I decided to run the 4 kilometers back to the car, up a hill. Like, it was extremely difficult, but I wanted to push myself. And I had the exact same experience, again, at a very visceral level of my load, feeling light, of me taking the responsibility. And at one point, so after about 2.5 kilometers of me running with this rock, I got up to the kind of top of the mountain to look across from where we had just come from. And I saw it was just beautiful. It was unbelievable, just the vastness of the mountains and how phenomenal they looked. And I began to cry of just like, in order for me to see this beauty was me pushing myself and me having to endure and me having to struggle up that mountain with this rock. And how dare I think I can live and have this experience without that work? That's what it was connecting with me and what I was kind of feeling. And I was like, will I stop to admire it? It's like, no, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Take this rock and let's just keep running. Let's keep going up this hill. Let's keep pushing yourself. Let's keep striving. And that same idea that you said there, that this load feels very light, this responsibility that I want to carry, the burden for me and my family and my values and my business and my life, while sometimes gets on top of me, it's what I want. And I know I can endure it. I know I can actually take on more responsibility. And that's what I felt was what I got and why I'm getting rid of this distraction. I want to step forth into this more, because it's like, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for this, to endure. I'm here to push myself. I can adapt. I can accept this load. In fact, I can handle a lot more than I give myself credit for. And we had a similar experience in that regard of what we kind of felt. But it was beautiful. It's fucking class.
I was thinking of someone sitting listening to this podcast going, the fuck are these two boys up taking mushrooms in the mountains, carrying rocks and crying? But it stuff like this, that's obviously a very unique experience, something like that. But it's another version of all of the other things that we speak about. Like when we talk about minimizing distraction and social media and building business and all that kind of stuff, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing, empowering yourself. And I say this a lot with the work I do and the podcast, and I talk about this a lot. For me, this whole thing is about empowering myself and by extension, potentially other people. It's everything. And embracing that and embracing the responsibility that comes with that. And once you embrace it, it's like fucking Jocko with discipline equals freedom. Once you accept and embrace that, it is free. It's freeing. It's empowering. You feel a load. I felt like a load, even though we're carrying the fucking rock, I felt the load lifted off my shoulders. I felt lighter. And the key, I feel, with this kind of stuff is we're here 4 days later, and I'm consciously now thinking about what that meant and how I integrate that into my life and how I'm going to change my behaviors and how I'm going to actively take that learning, that deep visceral feeling that I got, and bring it into what I do every single day in my life. And I feel like this is where there's a big divide, because if it's just about going and taking stuff or drinking or distracting yourself, and for that few hours that you're there, you feel amazing and you go back to the drudgery of life, you've missed the fucking point. That's escapism again. That's numbing again. That's running away again. But for me, it's really about what can I take here and what can I bring back to my life and what can I apply, and where has that shown me, what areas of my life has that shown me that I can now identify and work on that I maybe didn't have the awareness around before. I knew they were there because, as you said, this is deep inside you. This isn't giving you some fucking crazy alien download. It's inside you, but it's just helping you to, I see now. Okay, and here's an area in my life when I can apply that thing.
And it's interesting you say that, because it's like there's no need for us to go up in the mountains again tomorrow. Like again,
zero.
Yeah, the answer is there in terms of what we have to do. As you said, you're constantly now trying to bring that in a very intentful manner in your day-to-day life and step and lean more into that and endure more and carry that load with a real want and desire. And again, that's what this journey was. This journey is a chance for us to learn more about ourselves and what we can do, or the potential that we do have, or the things that are potentially holding us back. And now it's like, brilliant. You've got some lessons. Now, what are you actually going to do? And it's madness that we had a similar experience, albeit a different experience in terms of individually. But I feel like even our relationship has grown massively over the last kind of 2.5, 3 years. I feel like kind of what you're doing with your business, what I'm doing, kind of what we want to achieve in life. It's like, this is why we do what we do. It's like, you don't want to distract. You know, it's so much easier to die and numb yourself and do all that. But like, let's rock and roll.
When you say that, right, it's so much easier to die. I obviously know what you mean because we say it all the time. But can you clarify what that means for people?
Like, it's so much easier just to stay in bed. Like, sometimes you don't want to get up. It's fucking 5 or 6 or 7 in the morning and you got to get up. You haven't slept well. Maybe the kids are all over the shop and you haven't slept. It's much easier to be like, I'll put the covers over. But like, you can't do that. You can, but it's awful. Like, it's not going to serve you or empower you in any shape or form. So we can get out, even though the circumstances aren't perfect. We can get out and we can put systems in place and we can have conversations and we can take action despite not feeling 100%. Because I actually think that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to do these very, very difficult and hard things. We're meant to avoid those distractions because otherwise they will consume us. And it's not that me and you aren't going to be consumed again. It's not that we have the fucking answer and we're going to lean into this all the fucking time. But we've had so many experiences, not just with plant medicines, like with our lives, our businesses, our relationship in terms of our friendship, that we're getting this information and we want to keep leaning in. So it's like, let's fucking rock and roll. So we're asking ourselves better questions. Let's take much better action.
Yeah, let me just clarify that for a sec because you made a point there. We don't go up into the woods every month and do mushrooms. No. It is a bit, that's like the 1%, but it's a very helpful tool at some point. But yeah, no, I like the way you kind of clarified that it's easier to die. It is easier to die. And a lot of people might be listening to this, and I have some conversations sometimes where like that is easier. It feels better. Why can't I just spend my life doing that? And you can. Do whatever you want. Yeah. Absolutely you can. But like I said earlier on, and you kind of said, this is what we're meant to be doing. This is what you're meant to be doing based on what you want from your life.
Me, personally.
You.
Yeah.
And me as well. I'll say that sounds good to me. And this whole thing about environment and show me the 5 people you spend time with, I'll show you yourself or whatever. That's true because we spend a lot of time together and the people we spend our time with are all on this type of journey.
Having conversations like this.
Yeah. It's not to say this is the right thing for anybody to do. Do whatever you want. However, in my experience, I have stayed in bed and I've gotten out of bed. And for me, while the short term feels much better staying in bed, the long term feels terrible. It feels so terrible for me personally. So that's why I do it.
I think it's also interesting at the age we are. I forget what age I think at 34, 35 and 36.
26.
So, yeah, whatever. You're bald, me. So like,
I've been bald since I was fucking 17.
But like going into our 40s, 50s and 60s, like me and you always talk about this, about like wanting more from life.
Yeah.
Physically, personally, professionally. Like we're not slowing down. And what that means is that you can't allow these things hold you back like you were in your 20s because you won't get away with it. You've got more responsibility. You are literally growing older. So you've got to raise the standards right across the board. So if we want to have that life, it's going to require us to keep asking these internal questions, us taking much more intentful action and stepping forward into this way of living more and more and more. And I want that. Like, I'm not saying this is right. Just for me personally, this is what I want. And I think an awful lot of people want it as well. I think a lot of people do want this because life is difficult. So we can all band together and be empowered to endure or plod along or lean in and again have these conversations. I think we're better. We're better for it.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. So for the people who are listening who do want that, given your takeaways from 2022 and your plans or your focus for 2023, it's now February. It's a very difficult time of year for a lot of people. People think that January is the difficult time, but January is the motivation, the new year, the new me. February, many people may have fallen off the New Year's resolutions, are feeling a little bit guilty, feeling a little bit down, feeling a little bit low because I wasn't able to do it, wasn't able to stick to it. Here's another year of whatever your resolution that didn't come together for you was. What's a practical step for people to start? Because like we've kind of said very similar things here in terms that we're moving forward, we're removing distraction. If there was somebody listening now who maybe wasn't feeling great, kind of in that grey, in that staying in bed phase, not really sure how to get out of it, because let's be honest, it's so difficult to take that first step.
Yeah.
To break the inertia, to start building any sort of momentum. Like we have a little bit of momentum behind us now.
Yeah.
And we stumble and fall and have bad days and bad weeks. Even over the weekend, even after this amazing experience, we had a couple of days and there all the time, but we've a bit of momentum, and we've got each other, and we've got podcasts, we've got clients, we've got all these people like who keep our heads above water a lot of the time. So we're very, very lucky. What would you say to somebody, like, where do you start if you're in bed, if it's fucking 7:30, you're in bed, you can't get out? What do you do? Where do you start?
Well, I'll just go back to me personally. And again, what I'm going to be focused on for the rest of this year is courage. I think I said to you off podcast, it's not that you have to feel good and you have to know exactly how you're going to get out of this situation, but you can choose to act and do something despite how bad you feel or how difficult it is. Or you can choose to do nothing, but both are a choice. So I think, for me personally anyway, what I'm going to do is go, am I being courageous right now? It's as simple as that. So am I just leaning back because it's difficult and I'm a bit confused and I feel like shit? That's not very courageous. Well, what is courageous? I'll just get up and go for a walk, or I'll get up and make the bed. I'll get up, whatever the thing is that you're struggling with. Are you doing something, an action step that is courageous because you don't feel like doing it, or you're not even too sure of what it is? Because it's just that, as you mentioned there, momentum. You're not trying to take over the whole world. You're just trying to do something that you don't really want to do. If you can get that small little win, that's a much bigger win and a much more courageous win than just doing nothing about it. And that leads to something else. It doesn't have to be, again, taking over the whole world, but building that momentum step by step by step, that's game changing over the long term. So I think it's just courage. For me personally, it's courage.
Yeah.
How about you?
I absolutely agree with that. What I find and have found personally in the past is the little things like the walk and the making the bed and the journaling and the breath work and the water and the whatever, are all fantastic, and they're easy to do when you've got that momentum. And I find them when things are going great, I'm doing all my things.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of a two-way road there. I feel good because I'm doing all the things, but I'm doing all the things because I feel good. So you can kind of keep the bubble going a little bit there.
Yeah.
But if I was to, using my own experience, give some maybe recommendations for somebody who is maybe not feeling amazing. I'm not talking about people who are really struggling. It applies to everybody, but I'm just saying there's a lot of us who are just caught in a rut, caught in a grey, caught in the bed, whatever. Change your environment in terms of people. Start having conversations. It's hard to do initially, but have better conversations, because what happens is inevitably you'll speak to somebody, and it might take 10, it might take 20, it might take 50 conversations, but you will eventually speak to somebody who's going to recognize something in you that they can pull out of you, and they'll create a better environment for you to start doing these things. Like for me, you were a big part of that. When you came in as a client, you came into my bubble, and that started to help me do all the things I knew I should have been doing anyway, because all you did was help me see those things a little bit clearer. I knew they were there. Everybody who's listening to this, they know they have to make their bed in the morning, they have to drink more water. Everybody knows that. No one's an idiot. But taking that step is really hard. And what I found with you and with many other people in my life is having conversations opens doors. Talking about it, and you don't have to go and say I'm not feeling good. You don't have to start there, because it's a very hard thing to do. But you can just start having conversations about all the stuff that you think you might want to try, you think might help you, and just a bit of dialogue around it creates a different type of environment for your head. Now you're talking about this stuff more. You might do nothing for 6 months or a year, but you'll be creating the environment for yourself where you're kind of normalizing that behavior a little bit more, as opposed to normalizing the behavior you're doing yourself. So practical advice, just start having more conversations about this stuff, whatever it is: books, podcasts, breathwork, walks, exercise, fitness, health, personal development, whatever it is that tickles your fancy. Start having conversations, and then you'll find the people who want to have those conversations with you. When you find those people, you'll find the type of person who's more likely to encourage those habits in you, and more likely to hold you accountable, or more likely to point you in the right direction. And for me, that's been a game changer, because now all I do is surround myself with people who are like that. Because now I know that they're going to create a better environment for me, and they're going to pull me further along and further along and further along. That's why I do this podcast. I like to bring people in who are going to enhance my life and bring me further along. So that would be my advice going forward. With everything that we've talked about here, distraction, all that kind of stuff, it's all great, and it's all big learnings for me personally and for you. But like I said, momentum is powerful for us. To start generating on a momentum, it can be super simple. Start having conversations. And I've seen this personally with people who've come to me and realised that I'm into this type of stuff, and they start just asking casual questions like, oh, I noticed you do this, why do you do that? And then I see them 3 months later and they ask me the same questions. And then I see them 3 months later, I see them a year later and they've started to do one thing different. And the only thing that changed was they've started to ask more questions and they've normalized that. Whereas before they're like, oh, it'd be a bit weird if I go up and ask Danny about fucking that challenge he was doing. And now it's normal. So they've come in and I've seen this process in person, so I know it works, and I've done it, so I know it works.
I love that, because even just starting conversations or doing this again takes a bit of courage.
Yeah.
Because like there's a vulnerability there. There's still a lack of clarity, or what am I actually trying to get out of here? Or a vulnerability of just being open and honest. So I completely agree. And look, I think it's just important to kind of package all this to some degree, that like, I know we've already mentioned it, but like we don't have all the answers.
And we barely have any of the answers.
Yeah, but that's why we're saying this, articulating out loud ourselves, because we do want to be better. We do want to be more courageous. We do want to have these conversations. And I think like if you are at least being open and honest about what you want, I think you're halfway there.
100%. I don't know why I paused for dramatic effect there.
Yeah, quite dramatic,
yeah, very dramatic. 100%. Yeah. Mr. Loughlin, Mr. Movement 101, sorry, any closing statements?
Yeah, stop calling Mr. Movement 101 is the first thing, is what I would say.
But pick the name, man.
I actually was just checking there as you were talking, kind of a quote, or someone was saying about how loads of times in our lives we've done like good things or good actions, or we've got a good result, and it often reveals who we are. And I think that's why we are trying to be better, because we know underneath the distraction, underneath the fear, there is a better version of us. A much more, again, empowered, a much more helpful, a much more responsible adult. And I think that's why me looking into 2023 and being more courageous is I'm trying to reveal myself more. That person I know is in there. That person I know wants to come out and has come out on many occasions over the past. I want to stick around longer.
That's beautiful. And I am going to close on something that we potentially should have said at the start of the podcast, but we'll talk about this in the next podcast, give people time to muse on this. This is a quote that I recently heard from Tony McAlevey, who I found out subsequently got it from Mike Tyson, actually. I thought it was like one of the philosophers. I think it was Mike Tyson. I could be wrong there, but the internet said that Mike Tyson said some version of this, and it was, there are many great men, but not a lot of good men. So there are many people who do great things, but there are very few. Now, I don't know how much I lean into the very few. There are less people who are good. So I don't want to be a great man. I want to be a good man. I want to have compassion. I want to serve. I want to be better for the people who are around me directly. That's starting to feel a lot more attractive to me than to be a great man and to be a leader. But I just thought that was very nice. And listeners, you can muse on this for the next 3 or 4 weeks until we have Brian back on again. But I just think that's everything we discussed today is kind of nicely encapsulated in that. I want to be a good man. And all of these different things will help me be that good man. And me being a good man, that's what it means to me. Being more connected, being able to serve more, being able to help more. And this sounds extremely virtuous. Take it whatever way you will. That's genuinely how I feel right now. So when I heard that quote, I was like, that is really pressing a button with me there right now.
I love that. I always wonder about these podcast episodes. Like we talk about a lot and go extremely deep.
And I was like, did that make any sense?
That's what I wonder. But this whole, how long are we going for now?
68 minutes.
I wonder like what people are like, well, these lads just shut up. Get off the mic.
Maybe, yeah. But again, I the reason we do these ones, I think, is to be accountable.
Yeah, no, it is. And also, it's a conversation that we have off podcast. So you may as well hop on air and get our thoughts out there. And I think it generates ideas and potentially conversations outside of here.
Before we wrap up, because we should wrap up now. Before we wrap up, that's actually a good point, because based off what I just said there about having better conversations, for me, it was finding podcasts. It confirmed for me that this was stuff that people spoke about, and I heard people coming on and doing what we're doing right now, just shooting the shit, but being a little bit more vulnerable and open with it. And as we started talking about the mushroom stuff there, in my head I was like, people are going to think this is a bit fucking mad. And then I was like, is this going to affect our businesses? Is this going to affect what people think about us? And then I stepped one step back from that and I was like, the fuck is that fella thinking? This is all a game. This is all a big game. This is me creating scenarios in my head where I think I can't talk about these things because of what people might think about me and what think about my business. And then coming back out of that going, that's a trap that I'm setting for myself and then I'm falling into here while Brian is talking. I'm thinking about what people might think about what we're saying. So where did I start saying that?
I don't know, about maybe having conversations, being open, honest, vulnerable.
So for me, podcasts where I heard people speaking like this, open, honest and vulnerable on a microphone for people to hear, I was like, that normalized it for me and it had me leaning more and more and more and more into it. And I was introduced by podcasts to a podcast by a friend of mine, but it just opened up a whole new world for me of long form content with people. And it's a tool like anything else. You got a lot of shit podcasts, a lot of people out there who are charlatans, whatever like that. But for me, it opened up a world of people who were being honest, vulnerable, helpful. They were empowering me. They were serving me. And I was like, fuck, that I buzz off that. And it normalized it for me. So that's what this is for me anyway.
Well, I think I can talk for everyone who listens to this podcast that you're an animal at what you do in terms of those conversations and the podcast. The first ever podcast I was on, yours, and I'd been on like 50 or 60 previous to that over years. I didn't load, but all based around movement. Wow. But yours was the first podcast where I was like, that was phenomenal. Oh my God, where did those questions come from? The conversation we had. And that's obviously just you being extremely interested, very good at what you do. And I'm excited to see it grow, buddy.
I really appreciate that. Thanks for saying that. I just love it. Maybe that's what's coming across. I just really, really love it. I have so much growth in this industry. Like I'm looking at people now who I admire in this industry. I'm like, wow, that's how it can be done really, really well. I just really love doing this. And like you said, if the podcast does quite well, if it didn't do well, I'd still do it because we get to do this. And it forces us, like we would have conversations like this, but it forces us to alliterate and verbalize what we mean a little bit more, because now, you know, when you know someone, you can half say sentences and the other person kind of gets what you mean.
Yeah.
We can't do that here. We have to really force ourselves to verbalize our thoughts, which is another thing Chris Williamson said on his latest episode, which he was celebrating 7,000 or 5 years of podcasting, about writing or speaking. When you have to get something out, it forces your brain to solidify that concept and idea. And I've said this in really dumb ways over the last 3 years I've been doing this podcast. When I do this, it forces me to get clarity about what I'm actually thinking. Otherwise, it's just banging around in my head up there. And I think I know what I'm thinking about, but when I have to say it, it gets it out. So another reason why I love doing this. But I appreciate your nice compliments.
Do you think it's obvious that you fancy the arse of Chris Williamson?
If it's not, I'll just say it. I fancy the arse off Chris Williamson, just in case if he's listening. When he's listening, it's not clear, Chris. Big shout out to you. He's doing a phenomenal job. So he's not some people's cup of tea, but I really respect how he does what he does and his devotion to the craft. He's devoted to making the craft better.
And we've also seen his growth. So we started following him like around when he started, and to see his growth as a podcaster, as who he is, it's been class to see.
Yeah.
And just talked about the idea of enduring and keep going and that adaptation. So yeah, no, you definitely love him. Calm down, mate.
I definitely do love him. Yeah. Well, Mr. O'Loughlin, thank you very much again.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll see you in a month.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see you probably every day. See you tomorrow. Yeah, but I'll see you in a month. Thank you very much, and thank you, folks, for listening.
Cheers, man.